and welcome to part two of this interview of Jamie Baker and Anne-Marie Waters of UKIP. So last time we went over sort of the recent history of UKIP and our personal experiences in it, and we're now sort of coming up to the modern day. So Anne-Marie, um, we were about to cover the part of time when you weren't in UKIP. Want to take it away?
Yeah, well, I started a party for Britain. We did really, really well for the first few years. I think there's a bit of a problem in that people. I think during COVID and during lockdown and everything, people lost interest, full stop, and support in just about everything collapsed. And people's attention was taken up by COVID and by lockdowns. So we went through a massive slump, just like UKIP did. Um, and support fell away and it no longer became sustainable. I do actually believe what a lot of people say, that we need to start working together. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that UKIP is the right place to do that. So it was my foot back into unifying
Yeah.
us
So
was to go
that
back
was
to
what led you to returning. What
yeah.
what caused you to choose UKIP? Um,
Well, a lot of things. They were the only ones speaking about multiculturalism back in 2015, and I'm wholly opposed to it. They were the only ones speaking about mass immigration, and I'm wholly opposed to that as well. So it was obvious. It was obvious to me
well,
that that was where to go.
you say they were the only ones talk about that back in 2015, but I mean, you only just rejoined the party in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Yes. As I said, there's a lot of other right wing parties currently around. What caused you to pick UKIP over any of the
Well,
alternatives?
a lot of them are too extreme for me. UKIP is sane and moderate, but tough at the same time. Some of them are too extreme for me. Some of them are not robust enough. UKIP to me is both the only one that is a household name. We need a household name if we're going to do this. We don't have time to build up a name again, especially when the press is against you. This is something I found when I tried to do it. It's nigh on impossible to do from scratch, especially if you don't have much time. And we need a household name. We have one. It's the obvious choice. Plus, it's the right balance for me. It's not too extreme for me,
Yeah.
and it's not too weak for me. It gets the balance right, from what
Yeah.
I can see. Mm.
And I think maybe a podcast in the future would be really discussing those other parties, because I think there's a lot of people who just don't know anything about them. I
Yeah.
mean, due to a lot of things. I mean, I will constantly hammer at it, but there are currently two parties called Reform and Reclaim. I guarantee you, most lay people, would not be able to tell you which
Not
one's
a clue.
which.
Not a clue. They
I
wouldn't have heard of them. They wouldn't have
yeah,
heard of them.
Yeah,
especially
that and
Reclaim. Yeah,
that's the other thing. It's I mean, even back in 2019, everyone would have been able to be like, "Oh, it's the Brexit Party. That's Farage's new party." They understood that, but now it's like no one's aware.
I'm not even sure that's. The only one, the only one that everyone has heard of is UKIP.
Yeah, that's
Everyone.
totally fair.
We can sometimes get swept up. I think people who spend a lot of time on social media can get swept away and believe that because Lawrence Fox is prominent on Twitter, that Mr. and Mrs. Jones down the road know who Lawrence Fox is. They don't. But Mr.
Yeah,
and Mrs. Jones
yeah. I
know
was about
what
to
he.
say it's like I've never heard of him until he had his big Question Time controversy. Was it Question Time? He had like a big
Yeah.
palaver on, and that was what catapulted him into politics, really. Or at least it catapulted him into you know, being like people being aware of who he was. Because again, he was what, like he was an actor in some TV show
Yeah, as far as
before that. Hey, I'm not knocking that
yes,
TV show. I don't watch TV. I'll admit it. Um,
I will concur because I'll say that even with the 2019 European Parliamentary election, which people considered was did produce a bad result for UKIP, you still had about 500,000 people voting for the party. In a European parliamentary elections of usually low turnout, and that was equivalent to how many people were voting in the general elections in the 2000s. Then you come to the 2019 general election, and then 500,000 people turns to 22,000. It's a collapse that's worse than what happened after the EU referendum. So even until 2019, you had this quite sizable core people that were like, yes, I'm still voting for UKIP even through those troubles. I believe in what they're conveying. But now we're in this completely new era where there are still people who probably still remember UKIP. Obviously, there's that brand recognition. They're just not voting for UKIP anymore. Maybe because they're, again, like in COVID generally, they're just not enthused anymore. But that is one thing I'll take issue with, and maybe we'll come to this later about the future of UKIP, what people are going to do now. But when I talk to people who are like-minded politically, they still say they don't really support Reform or Reclaim or all these other parties, you know. But they still say, yeah, okay, fine, UKIP, I might have done so years ago, but now what is the point? What is the point? Nothing can really change. It is kind of, there's nothing we can really do. Obviously, they don't like the Tories and that sort of stuff, but they take that even more doomer attitude, that more pessimistic attitude than Zen here. So I suppose we'll come to that.
Well, I was about to say, to add a little bit of timeline to that. So the 2019 EU Parliament election was at the end of May 2019.
Yes.
So if we're to apply that to our timeline from earlier, that was right after Jared Barton became official leader of the party. And then the general election was right at the end of the year, which was
December 12th, I think. 12th of December.
Yes, 12th of December. Yeah. That was not only after Jared Barton had left, but also after Richard Brain had had his time and also left the party. So all of this inner party stuff happened between those two elections. I think is one thing to bear in mind if we're going to look at the timeline. Although obviously Jared Barton was an acting leader for a long period of time before.
Yeah, from 2018 or something like that.
Yeah, ever since the start of 2018, so he had a good year and a half as the lead, and then right after he became the official leader. I just thought I'd add that as a little just bit of trivia, just a little context of what was going on. But so you rejoined UKIP, and you're currently hopeful for the Hartlepool. Which election is it? Is it councillor or?
Oh, parliamentary.
Parliamentary, as a full-on MP election.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I will be facing Richard Tice, the leader of Reform. I don't have much regard for Reform. I think it's quite drab. I think even the name is quite drab. We don't need reform. We need to dismantle the system as it is right now and rebuild it, and dismantle the House of Commons and rebuild it. Obviously, I don't mean physically. I mean the people in it. Get rid of them and replace them. That's what we need. We need something that will catch the public attention, and I don't think Reform is quite exciting enough, and I don't think Richard Tice is very exciting either. And I don't like. He's one of those politicians. He's definitely in training to be a full-on politician, because he says something one day and then on the following day he says, "I didn't say that," but he did, and the internet never forgets. Well, so you can see him saying that people should be fired for not getting the COVID vaccine on one day, and then denying that he ever said that on another day. That I don't like. I don't trust it. I will never trust it.
I didn't even know he
been
said
to Hartlepool twice, I think.
I mean, that tells you a lot about. That says a lot about his lack of presence in politics. Is that someone like me should know that was a thing he'd done, but I'm barely aware of who he is, other than he's essentially Farage's stand-in. Can't be bothered to actually do the leading himself as much as he also does want to. It's an odd. I don't want to. I shouldn't get into it. But right. So to get to the whole point of this whole interview, you two and two others, those be Pat Mountain and not Richard Brain. My brain being awful. Peter Richardson have been elected in positions in the NEC. You ran unopposed. That is to say, they asked for candidates, and you four were the only people who applied, apparently. So you guys just got the job. So what caused you to want to run to be a member of the NEC? Jamie, if you want to go first.
Okay. There was no specific reason, actually. I part of me wanted to see an election triggered, because the past couple of times when vacancies have arrived, there's usually only the required amount of applicants to the positions, so therefore no elections needed. And that's happened 2 or 3 times now. Excuse me. And I like to see an election take place, internal elections. It's part of the reason I joined a party. You know, I want to take part in deciding who the leader is and stuff like that. And on a side note, I want to be able to know, as a general member, if I wasn't on the NEC, even as ex officio as the NNO, we don't.
Do you want to explain that for people who aren't like won't deal with party internal stuff?
Yes. So my before I was elected unopposed, the position of national nominating officer and other positions within the party are entitled to be on the NEC, but there's an ex officio rule, so I wasn't allowed to vote. I was just there to observe, really, and I did give opinions, and but I couldn't vote on things that mattered, where the party was voting on things. So that was that, really. But now, as an elected member, I can actually vote and say yes, no, I don't like that, and I can chip in my opinion beforehand. But whether how much notice was given on that, I don't actually know.
Yeah, for the Zoomers in the audience, Vicar and I both made the comment before when we were like sort of talking backstage earlier that he was on the committee, but he was not granted the title of officer.
Yes.
I can't let that joke go. I was really proud of that when I thought that up. But Anne-Marie,
yeah. Sorry.
No, sorry. You.
We don't, as general members, we, as far, I haven't had an email to say that we don't. Some one of the regular complaints from my branch is that we don't know who the members of the NEC are. Now, if there was an election and say there was 5 applicants for 4 vacancies, then you would have had a little bio or a link to go on the website and find out about these candidates, so you could choose which one to vote for. Now, that hasn't happened, and it hasn't happened for a few years. So I kind of would like to see something in the future. So when instances like this take place, where there is 4 vacancies, 4 applicants, that the party put out a little bio: welcome your new 4, 5, 6 candidates to the NEC. Please meet them here. A little bio, so then at least there is some traction in pleasing some of the members, which is a difficult thing to do, I know, in my 4 short years. So that they actually feel it, they know something about them, rather than just saying, Jaime, Anne-Marie, Peter, and Pat Mountain have all been appointed to the NEC. Thank you, and that's it. There isn't enough. If you don't know them, general day-to-day
Well, that's
members.
the funny thing. I mean, that's actually essentially the entire reason I put this together, was I had been hoping to get all 4 of you. So Peter Richardson had meant to be here. Sadly, he had a last-minute real-life problem, and sadly had to cancel. But I am very much wanting to get him onto the podcast again or properly in the future. Pat Mountain declined to attend. Fair enough. But I mean, originally I had actually wanted, if we had ended up with a full-on election, I had wanted to essentially do a whole, like, almost like the American primaries, where essentially you get everyone up and you just have question: what is your answer to this? What is your answer to this? What is your answer to this? And I wanted to just get so people could just see who these people that they will soon be voting for were. Essentially, that was what this podcast had originally meant to be. But then you guys all got elected, so I was like, well, I'll just grab you all and we'll just chat instead.
Yeah.
And so hopefully this can at least let this podcast, which I'm hoping will get shared about the party, can be used so people can, get to know you guys. And again, I'm very hoping to get Peter Richardson on in the future to chat with him. Fascinating man. Anne-Marie, same to you. Why did you decide to join the NEC or apply to it?
Well, it was suggested to me by a couple of people, but I through the time I've been in UKIP, people are always one constant and consistent about UKIP is that people are always complaining about the NEC. And I thought, you know what? I'll go and have a look. see what this thing is.
I really respect
Why
that.
it always has so many problems, and let's see if we can't whip them into shape a little bit, because this has been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll go and see what it's all about.
Absolutely. That totally
Let's fix
respectable.
it, Jamie.
Yeah.
Let's me and you fix the NEC.
Yeah. So
Go there with that intention in mind. What do you think?
absolutely.
Good.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. So, we finally caught up from the backstory, and now we can actually go with some questions. So, it's a really classic, political question, but I'm gonna set it to you, Anne-Marie. If you had, and it was totally up to you, you don't have to run it by people, it's completely your decision. If you could put into place one law or abolish one law that's currently existing, and it's completely up to you, you don't have to please anyone, you don't have to do politics, you just think this will make things better, what would it be?
I'd get rid of the Human Rights Act and create a written constitution for this country. This country does not have a written constitution, it needs one. The Human Rights Act is supposed to provide us with rights, but it does not. It does not provide us with rights, it doesn't protect our rights. What it does in the main is keep people in the country who shouldn't be in the country. That seems to be its primary use. It has to go immediately, and I would replace it with a real constitution. There are difficulties, however, because, of course, in our system, no parliament can bind its successors. So we would have there'd be a lot of constitutional difficulties in creating a US-style constitution for the country. Those difficulties aside, I do believe that's what the country needs, because Parliament is currently the protector of our rights. And the question there is, who protects our rights from Parliament? In the United States, they have the Constitution protecting their rights from Congress. We do not. And we can see what Parliament is like. We can see how many of our rights it takes away. And there's no protection. We are not protected from Parliament. We need to be protected from Parliament.
Vicar, did you have something to say there, or?
Well, I don't want to go on a hour-long lecture about the Human Rights Act, because that was a core part of my public law module. And so
A small introduction, by the way, Vicar is currently studying law, so he...
I'm a graduate of
There
law.
you go, then.
Oh,
Beautiful.
lovely, lovely.
Actually,
I did pose a question to Priti Patel, basically. I met her in some circumstances back when, some months ago. It was basically just about the whole, what are you going to do about our domestic courts, ruling on now, as we've seen with the Rwanda policy, kind of using the Human Rights Act, obviously trying to interpret subsequent laws according to the Human Rights Act. I did want to stress and clarify that some people say it incorporates the ECHR, which is not technically true. What it does is it creates quote-unquote convention rights, which are sort of mirrored between the convention rights that ECHR has. But the Supreme Court has said in a case that it can and will depart from ECHR when it wants to, the court in Strasbourg. So basically, I just want to have a little quick addendum. There is a complex minefield of issues here, but that's a very solid answer. Human Rights Act. Yes, that is the source of a lot of our woes.
This is just Vic being just like me and being a bit of a pedantic. That's what happens when the two of us are running a podcast together.
Lovely.
Jamie, same question to you.
I would probably. There's too much choice. I would probably have have people serve their full sentences at court. None of this. You're sentenced to 5 years. You're out in 2.5. Life means life. 5 years means 5 years. That's how it should be. All this rewards for good behavior as well once you're inside and things, that all needs to go. That's probably what I would change. I don't think that the punishment is enough when the criminals know they're only going to do half of what they're sentenced to. So yeah, whilst I could have a long conversation on my thoughts on the law and the judicial system, I won't bore you with it all. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would change.
That's a I didn't expect that, but that's really interesting. Absolutely. I mean, for the sake of openness, I mean, Vicar, do you have an answer if it was up to you? I think.
Oh well, okay. The problem is that my sort of views are kind of, well, I'm definitely firmly in the sort of, well, you've got to negotiate with all this sort of stuff. You've got to negotiate with the people, and so
Are we
yeah.
having a how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning moment here, Vic?
Yes, yes, yes. So true. I can't hear smoke. Well, I can't hear smoke alarms. This is so true. Uh,
Oh,
that's
poor
a bad
Jamie
joke.
poor
That's a
Jamie and Alan, we got no clue what we're on about. I'm
yeah.
sorry
All
about
right,
this.
just move on. Move on. I
No.
actually have been because I've studied the law for a while. Uh, I've decided, to be a nerd to pass the time. Is to start drafting my own acts of parliament or whatever in the kind of language of acts of parliament. So I've got stuff like a new constitutional reform act, which would, I think, we've got to rejig the way we do this whole Supreme Court business. So I am on the side of the whole, people who say needs to go. Perhaps I wouldn't go that far. I'm with people's sentiments on that. So I don't have a definitive answer myself, which is very bad form in a podcast.
Well, in fairness, we're the
But
interviewers. Neither of us
yeah,
expected to answer this question. I just thought I'd throw it out there.
no, but yeah, I've definitely got ideas milling around, but I've had them for a long time, for many years. So I'm trying to consolidate them so I can, when the time comes, be asked these sort of questions. Then I can have a definitive answer and not waffle.
If I had a personal choice, I think it would be something to the effect of it would be either, and they're both one leads to the other, but essentially basically do similar to what Anne Marie said of writing us up a constitution. I would just blanket open and full free speech in the country because everything leads on from free speech. But connected to that, I would maybe like immediately throw out these interesting things that the government's been doing recently and everything in the past of control over protests, where it's like, oh, you need to put in a license if you want to do a protest and such kinds of things. Like, and let's make this clear. I don't think people should be allowed to just walk into the middle of the street, glue themselves there, and bugger up traffic for an entire day. But like at the same time, I don't think that the government should be able to say to people who want to make their voices heard, no, we don't want to hear what you have to say, essentially. um I think that seeing what people truly think and believe is important, and that I guarantee that's probably going to make me some enemies even on the right again, because again things like the uh the protests we've seen in the last year with Just Stop Oil, you know, genuinely causing deaths with their protests. There was an open shut of like that. I'm not wrong, am I? And they literally delayed an ambulance, causing someone to die because they couldn't get the hospital in time. That happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and and them basically being protected by the police when when citizens tried to like make way for that. That's not on, but that I don't believe is protected by free speech. That's not free speech. That's you like blocking public spaces. But people having, I think there is an obvious middle ground between that kind of stuff and you need to ask permission to point out that you're being tyrannized in public. Like it's the day I realized that was a thing in this country, I despised it, and I've never not despised that. It's so just wrong on every level to me.
I suppose the possible middle ground there would be obviously, speeches. You can be conduct, but it's also expressing ideas and so forth.
I
But
think
obviously,
open and
anything
shut
but
is
like,
just speech is speech and actions are
yeah.
actions. Blocking
Well,
traffic,
I suppose marching down
deliberately
the
should
street
itself be
can be.
illegal as a separate thing from protests.
Oh
There
yeah,
you
obviously,
go,
and
done.
well, I think on top of that is the whole, when you focus on the idea of causing the death of someone, you could say, well, they should probably slap with some sort of manslaughter charge because they commit unlawful acts
Perhaps
and
that
then
it comes
that
to
causes a
it.
death.
Well,
If
it
there's no
comes
intervening act
that
and
comes
all that
to
sort of stuff.
you're trying to read what is a deliberate Well, we're gonna end up in legalese of this, but
Yeah,
basically,
but that's my
you know,
job. That's what I'm
yes,
being taught to do.
that is the whole thing of, do you want to say, well, were those people aware that was what would be the immediate consequence? Were they literally
Well,
right in
should
front
have
of
been aware.
were they
Objective
right in front of an
person
ambulance,
standard.
or was the ambulance, behind a bunch of other cars, and they were just focusing on the cars rather? Yada yada. I'd rather just, but
Yeah.
anyway, my point being, I would focus on a free speech law, either
Yes.
putting in place or free speech itself, or abolishing something that is blocking free speech immediately. That would be my reply to that. Watch me add 10 minutes to this with just an off the topic. Well, not off topic, but off top of my head. Man, let's just extend this.
Oh dear.
Vicar, you said you had some questions. Because the last question that I have on my list, I kind of want to be the one that we close out with. Want to go ahead with anything that you have.
Well, what I'm thinking of is, I guess, like, I talked about it, but I don't know if you're going to touch upon this as well. Like, I guess from my perspective, I already alluded to this. It's, I think a lot of people on the quote-unquote right, I've tried to avoid that label because it's a bit nebulous.
I don't like using it, but it's hard not to.
It's a good shorthand, also, not. But people on the right are
meeting moment.
But yeah, people, I guess, on the right or whatever, that people who are definitely with like UKIP in terms of ideology, or sort of that kind of sphere. It's they want to support something or someone, to stop what's happening. The government restricting free speech. The people stopping the Rwanda plan through the courts and all this sort of stuff. People stopping road cats climbing on computers. But when I speak to people, it's like talking about UKIP. They sort of say, well, what's the point? They do recognize there is that brand recognition. They just sort of go, what's the point in supporting them? They're a dead party. Sometimes they'll say, especially if they're young people, they'll say, it's too many old people in the party. And yeah, I get the sentiment they'll say, we'll wait and see for a great person to come, even if they're people who distrust
Yes, you've
Nigel
talked about this
Farage.
in the past. This is an opinion, currently.
Yes, yeah.
Jamie,
So I guess
Jamie, there's nothing wrong with having your cat there. We don't mind. If he wants to sit in the corner of the camera, we don't
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Give up.
Yeah, get more views. Yeah.
Oh, that's so. Hey, a special guest here.
hungry.
Special guest.
Yeah, special guest.
Oh.
New NEC member.
NEC mascot.
Ah, lovely. Yes, do that. Quick, write that down.
But yeah, so what is the question?
Yeah, my question.
We're having a bit of a preamble
question,
here.
Yeah, my question is, what would you do? I'll start, I guess, with Avery Waters. What would you do to help revitalize the imagery, sort of, and the brand recognition of the party? How would you get? Obviously, maybe you can't get 20% of voters to come back, but 1, 2, 3% of voters. How are you going to do that?
We need something. We need new policies, clear policies. We need a small amount of policies. Personal view, I think the manifesto is too big. I think it needs to be narrowed down and made succinct and focused on issues that other parties are not talking about, the major issues that face us, like identity, immigration, Islam. All of that needs to be discussed plainly and clearly. And like I said, we need to narrow down what we're talking about. We're talking about far, far, far too much now. If you look at Donald Trump's first election win, he essentially won the US presidency saying the words, "Make America Great Again" and "Build the Wall." These are things that seep into people's consciousness. If you're too complex, if you're focusing on too many things, you lose people. We need that. As for rebranding, look, it's a 30-year-old brand. I'm not sure we should throw it away.
Well, I guess
this is a funny thing to say. I mean, I'll just chip in here as some as said, as Henry Waters talks about, we have a brand new manifesto which is chunky. This is chunky, and I was talking to Vicar about this. Now, hopefully, by the time people are seeing this podcast or soon, there should be a full release of the manifesto on the website. Is what we're hearing from the party. We will see how that goes. Hopefully, you guys will see it soon. I mean, I'll release it on socials whenever it comes about, or it'll be in the replies. It'll be in the comments of this video. But this, from what Vic told me, is essentially sort of like there should be essentially 3 manifestos, is how he explained
Well, I mean, this is my idea of, if I was part of some sort of, like, you do have more, like, this is kind of middle of the road document where it's like a policy document.
This is a middle document that is like not overly detailed, but also goes through everything as possible. You also want a to the point manifesto, which is much more. It's a leaflet essentially, and you want you want a really detailed one that is this is step by step by step. The behind the scenes, this is all the individual steps that we're going to do. So basically, we've gotten our medium document, but you're saying we need the shortened to the point leaflet manifesto essentially. That's what you were saying there, Anne-Marie.
Not even just that. We do need a shorter manifesto, but you need a focus. You need a slogan. You need something like Trump did with "Make America Great Again." Obviously, not that. That's one of the greatest political slogans of all time. But that's something you need. You need a focus. You need to be clear. People need to know exactly who you are and what you stand for immediately. That can only be done if you zone in on something, focus in on something. It has to be something exciting, something controversial, something that nobody else is saying. That's where the starting point has to be if UKIP is to revive itself. I do think it needs some design, not rebranding the name. The name needs to stay because we've got, like I said at the start, it's a household name. The name needs to stay, but some professional branding could be done to revive things a little bit. Nothing cheesy, something classy, something modern, and something that screams clarity and fresh start. And let's put the past behind us and move into a new era. But we have to be clear and focused. You cannot be all over the place. People have to know immediately what you're doing and what you're saying and what you're there for.
There's a small tangent. The many tangents.
Make it very small.
But yeah, UKIP like relatively recently tried to rebrand with the slogan "People, not politics," and I like the attempt. Speaking to people in the party from what I've spoke to about them, they like the idea of that. They like what that's saying. Like from a, we like the heart behind it, but it doesn't really say anything to new or to new people who get into the party. I mean, did either of you have an input? Have any opinion on that?
I'm not sure what it means.
I mean, I would assume it's basically saying we want to focus on the actual problems that people deal with rather than, because there's actual, important politics of dealing with tax rates and laws, and then there's politics where it's the mucking around behind the scenes. As you say, we have to go in and explain this when that's not what a slogan should be. I mean, Jaime, what do you think?
Yes, I'm one of these people that is not quite sure what people, not politics means. I do understand the theory behind it to a degree, but I don't think it works. I quite favour a couple of the old ones being used, or perhaps some new ones being introduced. There's other ones that that have been quite popular in the past on social media, and I think that the party should look at perhaps changing that. I might bring it up at the next NEC meeting. Actually, now I've got a voice.
Yeah. But yeah. So I suppose
that leading on from that, same question to you, Jaime, about what would you do now that you're on NEC what would you implement to try and revitalise UKIP?
Oh gosh.
It's a bit broad, but
something that probably wouldn't happen. But I have suggested it. I've not had a reply actually. And I forget how I suggested it as well. But I think I'm treading in murky water here. I think that
I can redact things in the edit later if you regret saying anything.
I think that the present leadership and management of the party should apologise for the party's past mistakes. And I say that because I hate the idea of actually people apologising for the past. But we have, in the party, historically, have treated good people quite badly. Off the top of my head, Diane James, Suzanne Evans, Alan Sked, probably the founder, all sort of like forced out one way or another.
Gerard Barton is a very recent and
Yes,
very
yes.
high-profile example. I mean,
and
I will say, yeah, this is what I've been saying for a long time, is like, you are gonna struggle to get any people back into the party unless the Gerard Barton, and this is why I keep coming back to it, because I keep saying it and because I keep hearing it, because I've reached out to former people that I used to work with in the party, and they have said, no, not after what they did to Gerard.
mm,
I
uh,
genuinely think UKIP will not bring those people back unless there is an actual formal apology offered, at the very least, to Gerard Barton for what happened to him. I genuinely think, or at the very least, it's addressed. At least it's talked about.
yeah,
I don't think they are ever going to regain those people's trust on it. And I agree with you with your immediate stance on the I don't like apologizing for the past, but on the other hand, it's not about apologizing, but about making right. Like, for
yeah,
instance, like, there's often, to go for modern politics, it's often said, oh, we need to deal with the repercussions of slavery. It's like, but England stopped slavery and spent a lot of money stopping slavery. In me and Vic are Azumers. This doesn't apply to us, but you guys have paid taxes towards debts from us freeing slaves. Like, the taxes, like, for people who don't know, I believe it was only in 20 that we finally paid off our debts from freeing slaves hundreds of years ago. Vic, are you about to?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just confirming it's around about then.
Yeah.
I was
So
going to say one
we
point
have
though. Zen,
we
have
don't
you
need.
considered that you're a racist?
I consider that
Carry on,
every
carry
day. No, but it's not about, people always yammer about apologies nowadays, but it's not about apologies. It's about making it right, and I totally agree with you. But I mean, sorry, I just wanted to chip in there because it's near and dear to me.
yeah. I mean, I'm glad you agree. I think there does need to be something. All of the people that have been directly pushed out or whatever, off, forced to leave for whatever reason or for somebody else's actions, and those people, those supporters of people who were pushed out, have gone politically homeless or gone to another party. I think that if some kind of apology was made, we might be able to entice some of those people back.
Yeah.
If we acknowledge that the party has made mistakes and poor judgments, and yes, we've had some utterly stupid people say some heinous things in public, and people think that's party policy, and that's the slurs that we're labeled with now by the press and everybody else. Everyone thinks it's true. If we made an attempt to right some wrongs by an apology, I think that may go some way. Whether that happens is a different story, of course. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything else to try and turn the party around. And believe me, I do try and rack my brains as to what can be done. I agree with Anne Marie about not rebranding. I have hummed and hawed of that over the years because it's often a topic that's brought up for discussion.
You've spoken about the changing of the logo quite a bit.
Um, yes, I did. I think at a branch meeting a while ago. I think there's at the national conference. Someone posed the question to the panel on the stage, and Lembit Opik had made something quite passionate and said, you've worked 30 years to get to where you are. Don't change it, basically. And I agree. But I kind of think that if they changed the logo, sorry, go on.
I just want to say sidebar. I'll edit this out if we can't. Are we able to talk about the questionnaire we got given at the AGM, or is that technically like inter-party, like, confidential stuff?
No, I don't see a reason why not.
Okay. I mean, if you want to confirm with me, I can edit this out. But I mean, we were given an official party question of, do you think we should change the name of the party? And I mean, I answered no, absolutely not.
Hmm.
And I've spoken about this in the past of what do we do now that we've left the EU? what is UKIP's purpose. And I mean, opining personally a little bit, being a bad interviewer as usual, but it's how it is. I've put forward the suggestion that we should focus on the independence part of it from a more kind of like what would the term be? Personal
A wider perspective.
Hmm?
A wider perspective on what it means to be.
I'm more meant from almost a narrower perspective, a more
Oh, okay.
personal,
Interesting.
a more what's
less
spiritual,
narrow and
a more
more
spiritual level. We should focus on how people can be independent, focusing on the independence of individuals and how people shouldn't rely on. And obviously this goes to my libertarian beliefs, but I think we should focus more on people being independent, not needing to rely on the state and things, and that if we're going to take the party in a way while keeping its own identity, I think that is a direction. If people don't agree with that, fair enough, but that's an idea I've come about of keeping the name and keeping meaning of the name while giving us a new direction and focus.
Mm.
But, yeah. Is there anything else? Because we're up on gone past 40 minutes on this second part. Is there anything either of you two wanted to say with this platform?
Yeah, I will add a little bit about what you're saying about independence. Now, this is not, the UK is not an independent country. We are told by outside bodies what laws we can or cannot pass. We've seen it now several times with this. We are tied into treaties. We need to get real independence back. We cannot pass legislation in the House of Commons in this country only to have it overruled almost by external bodies.
Yes.
We cannot take orders from the World Health Organization or the World Economic Forum. We do not vote for them. That is not a democracy. So we are not an independent country at all. But I think another thing we should focus on, given the erosion of the free market that we are seeing, the importance of the free market. People don't understand why the free market is important. They don't understand how it protects them from government tyranny. We need to start shouting about the free market, and particularly the impact, the erosion of it by climate change nonsense. Climate change, we are in a situation where states are telling companies what to produce rather than the market. That is a erosion of the free market, and that is something we should be focusing on too.
Yeah. No, that's actually a very good point. I'm more just meant because most people are just like, well, we left the EU. Now what is I'm more meant from abroad, but I do agree. Yeah. Independence of the country itself.
Yes, so we are governed by the House of Commons and only by the House of Commons. And when we get to that, in order to get to that, we're going to have a better caliber of person in the House of Commons.
Yes.
That's our task.
Jamie, did you want to say anything regarding that, or?
I echo what Anne-Marie's just said. I can't really add anything to that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Becca, did you have any more? Because I think your last question of saying what would you guys like to do kind of like was essentially a replacement for my what were we hoping to see from the party.
Well, I suppose the spin there is, we're talking about more what they, would want as in
there's echo.
versus like what is more realistically going to happen, what might be on the horizon for UKIP, especially.
Yeah.
I did want to say as a quick side note that, I'm not going to dox myself too much, quote unquote, but I am hearing from the kind of professional lawyering classes of this country that they still say we should be more activistic, because they mentioned some UN treaty about how the UK all countries should promote the legal profession and explain to the public, how great lawyers are, because they took a shot at the enemies of the people headline, Daily Mail, or I forget the exact publication, but other things as well, and recent comments by the Tory government, those evil Tories talking about lefty lawyers, how dare they? So that is a good thing, and we want us to talk about because you might have an even more emboldened professional class. I was going to say, going to try and stop laws by the House of Commons because this UN treaty said so, and this article said so, and this court stopping that, and this. It might become even more of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we What got was it the Rwanda thing got blocked by the Supreme Court recently?
Well, so yeah, I think the divisional court allowed it, and then the Court of Appeal blocked
God,
it. But it was a 2-1 decision though. Jeffrey Voss, the Master of the Rolls, he actually sided with the government. So interestingly, wasn't unanimous. And then the Supreme Court, I think, unanimously said Rwanda plan is unlawful. I did try to read through the judgment to see what their grounds were, but it looked technical and boring even for me.
But
So
the
I'll
point
come back to it
the
later.
point I want to make is that, like, I think because of the Americanization of a lot of things, just due to how culture is, a lot of people hear, "Oh, the Supreme Court of England," and they just think of some great storied institution, and I'm like, I don't even think it's older than I am,
No,
it
it's
was
only a
made
few
in
years
2010.
ago.
because Blair set it up, didn't he?
Yes, in the 2005 Constitutional Reform Act, and it replaced the House of Lords Committee thing.
Yeah, so
2010.
it is a almost brand new institute. It's not something with, you know, like, it's not something with traditional significance in this country. It's not something that has like stood the test of time. It's very much something that was like pushed in very recently. And
Yeah,
but I
younger
think
than
that
I
I
am.
think that because of the Americanization and how people see things, people hear, "Oh, the Supreme Court," and they project the American Supreme Court's influence and relevance onto it. And I think that's a problem. But I think Americanization as a whole. Well,
True.
I say this, someone who's a fan of
Yes,
America
yes.
personally, but America isn't England, and we should be very aware of that.
Well, the US Supreme Court shouldn't really be able to strike down legislation anyway, but that's a different story.
That's a
I won't go
whole.
on
I mean,
that
that's a whole
tangent.
other thing. But I was just saying, like the American Supreme Court's very different from the English Supreme Court, and I wanted to mention that as a
Yeah.
follow on from the stuff about lawyers and all of that. Oh god. I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about stuff about like politics, but it's a bit of an awkward like staple on. I probably should have had it at some point earlier in the conversations. But I mean, if you want to just have this as sort of like the last 10 minutes of just talking, we could. Because we talked earlier about Farage with having his big ego in politics, and that was one of the big problems. And it's like we're seeing it again now. So I mean, Jaime will know, Vicar will know, and you may not know how due to sort of like the local party. Or Jaime and I have been attempting to run a local sort of like uh what was the term we used, like a conference,
Yes.
a northeast England conference for 2 years now.
Yes. At
It's
least
been a
2 years.
while. It's been a
Mhm.
while that we've been attempting to organize this thing, and we've had a number of problems. But one of them was one thing that because I had said at the time, because this was when these new parties had started to spring up. I was like, right, let's bring them in and let's talk to them. Let's just have this as an open conference. Not even use UKIP branding. Let's just be the Northeast Free Speech Conference. Let's invite Heritage, Reform, Reclaim. You know, I wanted to invite them and be like, right, let's sit down and talk. And most importantly, and again, it's the purpose of this podcast. Let's just give people something to watch, because the modern world is a community of video watchers, of podcast watchers. Let's give some people some videos to watch of representatives of these parties sitting down and talking about the values of the party, so that people can see what the difference between parties are. Because I guarantee most people will look at them and just like, what? There's 4 different parties. What's the difference between them? What is the difference between UKIP and Heritage, between Reclaim and Reform? What do each of these parties individually stand for? Most people don't know. So let's try and get an event set up where we could get representatives from all these parties to sit down and just discuss things and figure out what their differences are, if any. And no one from the other parties ever responded saying that they would attend. And this is despite individuals from those parties going on big successful podcasts and going, we need to unite, we need to work together, we totally need to figure out, like, we need to beat the Tories by working together. And then I go, hey, would you like to come to this thing and work together? Oh, but we're not in charge of that, are we? And it's like a quiet version of the Farage effect, where all of these people, and I'm not gonna, I'm a bridge burner. I'm not gonna name any names on this podcast yet, but these people like, it feels like they're doing the exact same thing where it's just like, but I'm not in charge of this thing, so why would I do that? And it's like, it's exhausting to me as someone, because I don't want to be a party leader. I don't even particularly want to, like, if all of this happened and I want things to be fixed, and I don't care about how we get to that stage where the country becomes decent again, where young people can have a decent job that they care and love about, and a home that they can afford, and a country that they feel like they belong in. That's all I want. I don't care how we get there. I don't care if I am, as Jamie says, just someone in the background doing the little bits of paperwork here and there. But so many people want to be the new Farage. They want to be they want to be the pillar that everyone forms around, and because of that, we're all spinning around each other and doing nothing, and it's exhausting. So consider this my plea from Tyne and Thames. If you are in Reclaim, Reform, Heritage, or if you are in the higher up of UKIP and hopefully you will be watching this, please get in touch. There is an email down below for correspondence. Get in touch. I want you guys to talk to each other and figure out what your differences are, so that the public can figure out, even to a degree, so the public can choose who the best person is, because they don't know, and that's why none of us are getting votes. None of us are getting votes. I mean, I say all this as the new general election's around the corner. We'll see how that goes. Maybe something insane will happen and there'll be a great obvious leader from that. We'll see. But I want people to talk, and I can't believe that that's such a massive ask. But I guess that's the naivety in me, Jamie. As you say, you used to say you were naive. I have that as well. I don't understand why it's so hard for people to sit around a table and talk. I think I'm quoting the Doctor there. Actually, I think that's one of his quotes from one of the recent seasons, one of the half decent ones.
Right.
Hey, very British. Do you guys have any closing statements you'd like to make? We've got about 5 minutes left.
Anyone in politics will stand by their beliefs, and there's a lot of passion in politics, and whether you agree with the person speaking it or agree with the subject, there's going to be differences of opinions, and we have to, if we unite on similar policies with different parties, then we have to work for the greater good, and I don't think that will happen, unfortunately. I live in hope. I like to be proved wrong, but certainly there is hope. And if we don't have hope, we have nothing at all. So yeah, I live in hope, but even if it doesn't happen, we fight our own little corners. The People's Army is still here. I'm purple through and through, and that's all I have to say.
Anne-Marie?
I agree with that, Jamie. There comes a time when you have to stop asking these people to work with you. They're clearly not going to. So let's focus on ourselves. Let's fight our own corner, fight for our own party, and sort out our own party and give our own party a new start. Because as I've been saying a few times throughout this, we have something that they don't have. We have 30 years and a household name.
Yes.
Nobody else has that. So let's let them get on with it. They're not going to respond. I've been through this several times myself.
That's fair. My point there was more just
better.
My point I wanted to make there was more just the hypocrisy side of things. They've gone up in public and said that they want to work together, and I hate that they then just don't behind the scenes, and it's infuriating me.
They're not serious, though. I don't think many of them are very serious. Reclaim is not a party, for example. It is not a political party. And I'm not sure how serious Lawrence Fox is either. I think he's keeping himself in the... I don't know him. I don't dislike him because I don't know him. But I think he's keeping himself in the public eye and being a bit of an agitator and entertaining in a way. But these are not serious politics to my mind. UKIP is about all there is. So I think our focus should turn inward, and let's make this party, give it an identity, a vision, and make it exciting. And we have that household name. Never, ever forget that.
Yeah.
Vicar, do you have anything to say as the outsider looking into UKIP? And feel free to be as honest as you want. That's all I want from this podcast.
I guess just very quickly, that it doesn't have to achieve like massive success in the next year or two, but even returning to that sort of core, even getting 100,000 people to vote for UKIP, then UKIP would still be back to, in the 2000s where it was a minor party, it was a third or fourth party, but it was something. It wasn't nothing.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how things go in the coming months. I mean, yeah. So hopefully, if this podcast does well, we may well be back here with other members of the party, and hopefully, Jamie and Anne-Marie. This has been one of those this has been a party politics stream, which is not something I'm generally in favor of. I like talking about actual problems in the world, but you've got to start somewhere, So I would love to have the both of you back one day to talk about, more policy-focused things rather than the sort of like the inner party stuff.
Once we have a PDF of the manifesto.
Yes, absolutely. But hopefully we'll have Jamie and Anne-Marie back one day, and we'll have other members of the party back soon, hopefully. But thank you all very much for joining us here at Tyne and Thames, and I want you all to have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everybody.